Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. I'm Alan, I'm the marketing manager at AppViewX, and I'll be the moderator for this session. Before we jump into the content of the webinar, let me just give you some ground rules or housekeeping rules. If you have any questions during the course of the webinar, feel free to type them into the question box below your screen. We'll keep an eye on them and bring them up right when the webinar ends in about 25 minutes. We have our presenters, Murli, Chief Solutions Officer at AppViewX, and Anand, CTO at Fortanix, on the line with us. They'll be joining us very shortly. Let me quickly take you guys through the agenda for today's webinar. So what we're going to be talking about is encryption and how private keys play into the bigger picture of encryption, how crucial they are for maintaining a proper security setup. And then we're going to look at how private keys can be protected, what are the best ways to do so, and how you can do so in your organization. And then we'll take a closer look at what AppViewX and Fortanix have to offer in the private key protection and automation space. And we'll close it out with a demo as well as a question and answer session, which is where we're going to take all your questions. So that being said, I'm going to hand it over to our presenter today, Anand, all yours.
Thanks, Alan. And thanks, Murli, for inviting me to this webinar. I'm really excited about the joint work we're doing together. So to start with, data has been widely recognized as a new oil for the digital economy. And both consumer companies, enterprise companies, are all collecting massive amounts of data to help improve their operations, give a better user experience to their customers. And while they're doing that, the importance of securing that data has never been greater. There have been new regulations in recent times, like GDPR in Europe and CCPA in California, which put massive penalties for every instance of data breach. So all the large companies, enterprises are looking for ways to secure their data. The best way to secure data is through encryption. So if you can encrypt your data wherever it is, whether it's sitting at rest in your database as a file system, whether while it is being transmitted from one service to another service, and also when it is in use. And that is something new which has become possible due to new advances in hardware security. But if you can encrypt your data at all times, that's the best protection you can get for data security. But while encryption is easy, key management is hard. So how do you secure the keys that are used for the encryption of data as the data travels from different databases to services to IoT devices, all of that in your organization? And to solve this key management problem, people have invented PKI, the public key infrastructure. This is a method by which you can have your private key, public key, and every entity that needs to communicate with some other entity, they have their own digital identity in the form of a certificate tied with a private key that they can use to express and assert their identity. But securing these private keys, which form the basis of PKI, is very important. And you need to provide confidentiality of these keys. Nobody should be able to steal them. You need to make sure the keys are available at all times so they can be used. And then you also need to protect the integrity of these keys. If somebody tampers with the keys, and then they can impersonate and do bad things. Going further with the private keys as they become critical piece of the PKI puzzle, typically private keys are stored in some trust stores, and they're assumed to be secure. But are they really secure? There has been a lot of instances where private keys have been stolen, and attackers have been able to use various exploits, trojans, to impersonate an enterprise server or a service, and then steal data from customers or from their users. It's very important that private keys must be secured and protected at all times, whether the private keys are sitting at rest in some place, in key stores or on the file system, whether the private keys are being used in transit. So when you use TLS at that time, you should make sure that the keys are protected as well. and also in use. So when the keys are being used, both private keys and then the session keys or the symmetric keys that you use, how can you ensure that your TLS terminates in secure environments, the private keys are secured, and they're never exposed to the attacker? So how do you secure these private keys? So different organizations, they use a variety of methods to secure the private keys. And typically it ranges from a local key store where you have your Java key store or your app-specific key store locally on your machine, on your server, or even on your laptop, where you can keep some of your keys. And on the other extreme, you have hardware security modules, or HSM, which provide the best security, the best compliance in terms of FIPS or PCI that a lot of organizations require. But then you also have software vaults in between. In terms of the pros and cons of different approaches, so you can see that the security provided to the private keys keeps increasing as you go from a local key store to a software vault to an HSM. And also, while the security goes up, the other considerations as well. So key stores are easy to use, but then keys can easily be copied. Many times they're not very compliant, so organizations are reluctant to use it, and they have been moving towards a software-based solution. The software vault, while they provide ease of use, they're also not very secure. It is possible for an attacker to get in, compromise the software vault, get all the secrets, get all the keys out, and that is problematic. So our understanding and our preferences, the keys which are most sensitive for the organization, they should be protected in hardware security modules, where you get the best security and the best compliance. The challenges there have been in terms of cost. HSMs have typically been costly, and then complexity. And this is where the configuring these HSMs, integrating it with the applications which are supposed to use the keys which live in the HSM, they have typically been very complex and hard to configure. So, Murli, I have a question for you. So, when you are talking to your customers, how are they protecting their private keys? What are the conversations you are having with your customers in this regard?
Yeah. So, what we have seen is, yes, there is a cost involved with HSM, but that said, when the session terminates, the first session that terminates from the internet, from the customer browsers, that first termination is typically done on a device which is connected to HSM. That way, everything within that is handled by perimeter. Right? Even in my previous life, I was working in a bank, and we work with quite a variety of industries: financial services, healthcare, energy, retailers, and whatnot. So wherever there is an integration with an unsecured zone, right, or unsecured or an open internet and whatnot, the first termination is typically on a device which has the HSM. That way, they have a pretty good security on that, and then post that, right, depending on the appetite for the organization, there are organizations which do end-to-end encryption and look at using HSM in certain cases, or look at using software vaults and other capabilities as well.
And while people have recognized that they should be securing their most sensitive keys in HSM and do the first decryption inside an HSM, typically people have had a love-hate relationship with HSM, where and there are several reasons for that. The HSMs have typically been very costly in terms of just the price of getting the HSM, and then they don't scale very well. They don't have high availability. So for a large organization, the cost of acquiring and maintaining and using a large number of HSMs becomes very cost prohibitive. There are also issues with complexity in terms of interfaces, APIs, integration. A lot of times there are manual processes for key generation. There are key ceremonies where people have to come together and do certain things to use a key, and that is generally not very convenient, especially as the world is moving to the cloud and to DevOps environments where things need to be more automated and with less manual and human intervention. Also, when you're trying to integrate with applications which typically use HSMs, so something like an F5 appliance, then there's increasing complexity of configuring these configuration on the F5 side and configuration on the HSM side. And so in general, people have found HSMs to be expensive and costly and hard to configure. With Fortanix, our product Self-Defending KMS changes all of that. So the way we have designed our product, we provide the flexibility of modern distributed software. So our product is deployed in a scalable, distributed fashion. You can just create a cluster of Fortanix nodes, and as you add more nodes, you get increased capacity in terms of the number of operations you can handle per second. But you also get increased high availability, increased redundancy, disaster recovery, all of those nice features that you expect in modern distributed systems are all built into the product, which means all your keys are available globally across your fleet of Fortanix nodes, whether they're sitting on-prem or in the cloud at all times. With high availability, you also get the highest level of security. We use modern hardware-based secure enclave technology. The product runs inside Intel SGX-based secure enclaves. And the entire software stack, going from authentication and authorization to access control, to the keys and how the keys are used and protected, the entire software stack runs inside secure enclaves, which protects the software from attacks from malicious insiders, root users as well. And then we have provided an appliance which has been validated for FIPS 140-2 level 3. So if somebody is looking for high compliance, then we do satisfy those requirements as well. So with Self-Defending KMS, we get the benefits of scalability, high availability, security, and compliance, all of them into one single product. We'll hand it over to Murli to talk about the work we have done together with AppViewX.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Anand. And with AppViewX, right, so what we offer is an integrated automation and orchestration capability. Right? So the platform itself enables enterprise IT to automate the lifecycle pretty much all the way from setting up the HSMs, integrating with privileged access management tools, integrating with the DevOps tools and whatnot if you want to set up a CI/CD pipeline. And the platform itself has capability to discover what is already deployed and gives you a full end-to-end visibility into the environment and integrates with cloud and in a hybrid setup and whatnot. Supports asymmetric and symmetric keys and SSH certificates, automating the whole asset certificate issuance and whatnot, and then primarily orchestrating the whole secure key setup and configuration across IoT and all the mobile endpoints across all the whole slew of devices. Now, when we look at the joint solution that AppViewX and Fortanix brings in, right? So when I'm taking a customer use case here, which is used by a financial services firm. So we spoke about how customers look at using HSM in the first determination, right? So in this particular case, there is this customer laptops or desktops which connects to the online banking platform. And the first termination is typically on some sort of load balancer. In this particular case, it's F5. And the F5 can talk to Fortanix to access the private keys or store the private keys there. So in this, right, and then it basically re-encrypts the traffic and sends it to the web server and app server and whatnot, depending on what they do use internally, right? Typically, the first decryption is done on F5, and that connects to a HSM in majority of the cases that I have seen. Now, one of the challenges that they have is because of the scale and because of the high availability needs and all that, this particular entry point that you see here, right? It could be in at least 3 different data centers. It could be spread across the globe as well, depending on the size of the bank and size of the customer. And this applies to not only the financial services but also other areas as well, right? And when there are high availability, when there are 1 or more devices in each location, and they connect with HSM, and that's where the keys are stored. Now, there are a lot of operational day-to-day tasks, right? The day 2 tasks that come in. For example, if a device fails, or if you RMA a device, you have to bring a new device in, set it up, configure it to talk to the HSM. You have to create an app on the HSM, and then define where the keys are going to be stored, get the API key, configure it on the device. The device has to talk to the HSM, make sure it is able to communicate and whatnot. Now, if this is done manually, right, to create a CSR on the device, and you run a command, you have to give an option which says use the crypto to communicate to HSM. If you miss that, the default is to generate the keys on the device. Now, again, there's a pretty good possibility that folks might slip that, and then that creates the key on the device. And if they created the certificate and whatnot, right, now you have to revoke the certificate because the key is potentially on the hard drive, right, which defeats the purpose of having a HSM. Now, if this is a manual process, it becomes a little bit tricky to configure, right? And what AppViewX does is it orchestrates across the different systems. We'll talk about all the integrations. But what we're going to show in the demo today is we're going to focus on the F5 piece of it, where AppViewX pretty much, when you create a VIP on AppViewX, right, it basically configures Fortanix to create an app, and it basically talks to F5 to configure the API key to communicate with Fortanix, generates the key, and then uses that key to generate a CSR. And we get the CSR, we upload it to the CA, whatever CA that you would use, and get that certificate and deploy it on their file. And the same thing would be leveraged to renew the certificates when it is due to renew, where we would basically regenerate a new key so that you're not reusing the key and the whole 9 yards. And in case of an RMA, right, when you have to onboard a new device, you can bring those and then trigger the flow, and then that takes care of the whole thing, right? Sort of orchestrates around the process. Now, on top of it, there are additional steps that we could add, where it basically creates a change management ticket, whether it is Jira, ServiceNow, Remedy, and whatnot, and then waits for its approval and goes through this full flow and all that. We have done a whole bunch of capability that way, rather integrations that way. But right now it is more of a sample flow that I'm going to show you. And it's customizable. You can actually, it's a drag and drop plugin based architecture. So you can basically configure it based on what you wanted to use and what you wanted to see. Okay, so let me share. Share my screen, and then I will show you the quick demo. Okay, it's thinking. Okay, yes. Takes a while to get the. All right, I hope you're able to see this.
We can see it now.
Anand, can you? All right, good. Okay, so let me go through this. So once you log in, right, I mean, again, this is a self-service portal, so you can define how you want to configure. I just called it Fortanix automation, and once you get in there, right, it gives you a capability to create an FI with. In this particular case, it's application configuration. Depending on how complex it is, you can define whether it is a single device, multiple device, hundreds of devices, whatnot. You can multi-select those, and then it'll basically take care of the whole process there. So this here we are setting up a standard virtual server, and we are creating an SSL profile with a new name, and we are associating that to that web, right? And this is going to create a new app in Fortanix, create the key there, and create the CSR, and then generate the certificate. So now I just submitted the inputs. Now this can come from ServiceNow and whatnot. Now once it is triggered, what this does is it basically goes and creates an app group and gets the API key from Fortanix. And then it goes to F5, configures it, creates that web, and then configures it so that it talks to Fortanix. And then it generates a CSR, generates the key and CSR, and then it uploads the certificate to a certificate authority, that's third party, DigiCert, Sectigo, Entrust, whatever you use. And then it gets the certificate from there. And once it is done, it validates if it is able to connect to Fortanix, and if the keys are there, and the certificate is there, and the web is working properly. So it does a full validation. Now you can also go back and then look at the previous flows that has been created, as well as basically like a DVR. You can play, pause, replay, look at what happened. Now, this, as I said, this is a sample flow, right? And you, depending on what your use case is, you would configure it. And the way you would do that is there is a workflow dashboard where you would basically go to a design mode, and this is like the flow chart, right? Where you define what steps that you want to take. So if you want to add an approval flow or a change management, you just drag and drop. It becomes another bump in the wire, and then it goes and does that and executes the whole process. Right? So pretty simple flow that I wanted to share today. And let me jump back to the slide, and I will show you the same thing that you saw, right? We have capability. Oh, I didn't show you the. Sorry, I didn't show you the client side capability. So it has out of the box Terraform, Jenkins, OpenStack plugins, ServiceNow plugins. All that is there. So you can basically click on, get a sample as to how you can call these, from whether it is, I showed you the UI, the same capability can be achieved through REST API and all these other means. Now, irrespective of how they consumed it, you can go back and then replay and then view what they requested and the whole nine yards, right? And same thing applies to all these other services. Like we basically can go talk to an DNS system and then get that IP. Now, if your HSM is registered in the DNS, and if you want us to go connect, look up and then connect to it, it can be done. So depending on how you want to set it up, or if you want to integrate with cloud, or if you want to bring your own keys, and the keys is on-prem versus you want to integrate to the cloud, that can be done as well. So basically orchestrates through all the vendors that you see here. And sets up the whole process. So the key benefits of this, right, of this integrated solution, the total cost of ownership. When you look at using HSM and PKI and setting this up, right, there is quite a bit of expertise that is needed to set up, configure, manage this. So we basically simplify the whole process so that from a cost perspective or a TCO perspective, it is optimized, and you're not doing this day-to-day mundane stuff, right? You're looking at more high-level, how you can enhance that and then raise the value is what you're looking at, right? And then the other important thing is ease of operation. Now, when you look at containers and there's short-lived certificates and all that, right? And renewal of those and managing those becomes difficult. So it sort of simplifies the whole operational management and whatnot. Compliance. Now, you might have a HSM, right? And for all the right reasons, you would set it up and all that. As I said earlier, if there is a human error where if instead of passing on the argument when creating a CSR, if they miss that, the default gets created on the disk. Now, this has happened a couple of times. I've seen this happen. So it's a human error, right? Because if the operations team is who's not aware of that, right? If they do that, then you're not compliant, right? So all those mishaps can be avoided, and you can be fully compliant where there is no human who has access to this and it's fully automated, right? And that takes us to the automation thing where you're orchestrating across and then automating the whole process from a renewal of the whole life cycle, right? Generation, renewal, and then revoke and whatnot. And enables high availability and security. Again, even during RMAs and replacements and all that, it is secured. And it basically supports multi-cloud environment as well. So because of that multi-vendor integration that we have and multi-cloud integrations that we have, it can be easily deployed in a hybrid environment. It can be set up in a cloud hosted environment. AppViewX itself runs some containers, so it's a next generation platform which enables you to easily adapt to cloud native environment. Right, that gives a quick overview and a quick summary of how AppViewX and Fortanix work. If you have any questions, please do type it on the Q&A section. I guess there are a few questions. You can look at that.
So, Murli, while we see the audience questions, one question I had for you was how easy or difficult was it to build the automation that you showed in the demo for your team?
Yeah, so it was, again, one of the key benefits or interesting commonality between both Fortanix and AppViewX is that both of us use a plugin-based architecture, right? So you have something called a plugin with which we are able to interface and then build capabilities there. So since we had an API to integrate with, it was pretty easy for us to build an integration. Again, compared to other systems and whatnot that we have done before, this was relatively an easy integration for us. Pretty straightforward and easy integration.
I think the power of APIs and plugins make it fairly simple.
Yes.
Not just to do this one integration, but a bunch of integrations we can do.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and then there is, again, this is, as I mentioned, right, this is just a sample, right? There's quite a few use cases that we can talk about, especially the SSH certificates, where as an issuer, right, the issuer keys can be on Fortanix, and it can issue the certificates for user access, user authentication, host authentication, and whatnot. All right, Alan?
Yes, Murli. Looks like we have a couple of questions from the audience. One of them talks about smaller teams. What about smaller teams? What's the difference in cost between the software vaults and the hardware modules? HSMs, I guess it means.
Yeah, so No, I can take this one. So typically people think that hardware modules or HSMs are way more expensive than software-based Vault. Well, this is true if you have a small use case and you are trying to protect a small number of keys. But with Fortanix, one thing that helps you is that as your requirement increases, as you want to use more of HSM to protect your keys at higher scale, the cost becomes comparable to what it would cost to get a software-based Vault. But you get much higher security than you'd get from a software vault. And you also get much higher compliance. So it's a matter of scale. So for limited use case, maybe HSMs are more expensive, but it becomes less so at high scale. Also, we have a SaaS option with our partnership with Equinix. So you get the exact same interface, exact same automation that you get with AppViewX, but there's just another way to consume the product as a service, and that may be more cost-effective for some teams as well.
Thanks, Anand. That was very helpful. And Mark, this is answered. We have another question. Hey, we already have a PKI, and I want to add lifecycle management as well as replace some of my HSMs with these on my existing infrastructure. Is this possible, and how long would this take to get up and running?
I can maybe take the first part. Go ahead, Anna.
Go ahead, Murli. I will add something to it.
Okay.
Sure.
All right, sure. So yeah, if you already have a PKI, right, and setting up the lifecycle management is pretty straightforward. We have, depending on the org, we have done it especially during COVID, in the middle of COVID, for a customer. We've done it within a month, yeah, it's pretty straightforward to set up. And if you have a cloud hosted, it makes it a lot more easier because if it is on-prem, getting access to VM, working with another team and all that could delay. If it's AWS, Azure, we could just create a CloudFormation, use our CloudFormation template, spin it up, and then get it up and running quickly. And regarding the HSM, can you talk about that, Anand?
Yeah, definitely. So many of our customers, they're large enterprises, banks, financial institutions, which typically already have been using HSMs for several years. So they already have a fleet of HSMs. And when we go in and sell our HSM, we don't expect them to just rip and replace everything. What we've done is we have built a feature in our product called HSM Gateway. And using HSM Gateway, what you can do is you can start using Fortanix, and you can start using Fortanix APIs and Fortanix plugins while continuing to use the HSM that you already have. So the keys that you already have created in your old HSM, they can continue to live there. We will just access those keys as a virtual key inside Fortanix using our HSM Gateway feature, and you can continue to use them. Once the time comes to rotate those keys, what you can do is you can choose to rotate the key into Fortanix. And at that point of time, you can cut the cords with your existing HSM, existing infrastructure. And then from that point onwards, you can start creating and managing keys inside Fortanix. We provide a pathway where you can migrate seamlessly from your existing infrastructure to Fortanix without having to rip and replace everything.
Thanks, Anand. And thanks, Malik. That was pretty interesting. Looks like that's all the questions we have for today. I think we can wind it up. Okay. Thanks, Murli and Anand, as usual, for presenting today. And guys, thanks for joining. If at all you had any more questions and didn't get the chance to ask them, you can always email them to us at the email address you can see at the bottom of the screen. You can also reach out to us on social media, or if you'd like, you can just set up a call with us. We look forward to seeing you on the next webinar. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.